So we bumped into you yesterday at Pride, and I wanted to ask you, what was your initial reaction when you saw us?
It's funny actually because it came out later in the conversation, but it just flashed through my mind that I recognised the sloganing.
Right.
Yeah, because there's a famous guy here who actually I think is here today.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Danny Shine, who's
Yeah.
literally a London character.
Yeah.
He's a what do you call it? An agent provocateur, a
Yeah.
contrarian.
Yeah,
you know,
An agitator.
agitator. And then I got into the conversation with
Alexei, yeah.
Yeah. And that was really good. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
And then out of that, I think one of us raised the Shine connection.
Yeah.
So that was the context of meeting you and talking to you at on
Yeah.
Pride. You were there around Piccadilly with the
Yeah.
hats kind of governed.
So I'm assuming you've talked about antinatalism with Danny before.
I don't think I've had a conversation with him because. I mean, honestly, his style is his style, and I find it a bit more sort of provocative and entertaining. So the idea of having a conversation like we had yesterday, and we're probably going to have now, kind of doesn't happen with Danny.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not, everybody's got their own sort of way of doing things, and he has his. But it's not really. I don't feel it's something that. My view is that when you go into a conversation, there has to be some, even if it's a small idea that the other might think about their views or something. Maybe I'm being optimistic.
Yeah.
And you don't really get that with Danny. And I think at one point I did say I'm never quite sure whether he's being serious or not. I think
the points he wants to make are serious, but he likes to be jestful, is that a word? Jestful. I think he likes to be jestful in how he puts it across.
It's almost like the tradition of the Joker, the clown, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah.
The disruptor.
No. So, do you understand what antinatalism is? I don't know if you spoke with Alexei about it yesterday, or if you picked it up from listening to Danny.
I did, and one of the reasons I come to Speaker's Corner every Sunday is having conversations like this, and meeting people who have a view maybe radically different from mine, and really just probing as to where does it bottom out. I always think, when you're having conversations about ideas and so on, where does that come from? What's the underlying values? And I was trying to get to the bottom of that, and I spent some time listening to the conversation over there with the lady in
the lady,
and it's I find your position sort of contradictory,
right?
In a sense.
Go on.
There's none of you look utterly miserable with kind of festering sores and
Would you prefer us to be miserable?
No, I'm just saying that if I walked around a medieval city, after the Black Death, I think a lot of people would think, I wish I was dead. You would. You absolutely. And you think, well, that's very understandable.
Yeah.
But you're all products of one of the most successful, affluent societies in the world. That for all our complaints, the streets are fairly safe.
Yes.
You live in a country where the weather we complain about it all the time, but honestly, compared with the rest of the world, it's
very adequate.
Fine.
Yeah.
So I still don't quite get it. I don't get this notion that somehow things will be better without us, the human species.
Yeah.
And I still haven't really heard a cogent explanation for it.
So
have a go. Change my mind.
So there's two separate things there. The first is, if you hold an antinatalist position, does it make sense to be almost happy or satisfied with your own life? And then the other thing is, would the world actually be better if humans weren't here? Are those the sort of two avenues?
Yeah.
So I'll go with the first one first. So the way I see it is, so I can speak from my own personal experience. So there's a quote that I like by, do you know Emile Cioran?
No, I don't think so. No.
So he's famous for writing like aphorisms, and he's sort of like a pessimist.
Yeah.
And one of the things he wrote was, and I might butcher it, but he says, I do not hate life. I do not desire death. I only regret being born. And I really vibe with that, because I think my life is, I live a very privileged life. In the grand scheme of things, out of everyone who's ever existed, everyone who exists today, my life is very good. And I don't actively lament the fact I was born. I don't dislike my parents. I don't hate my life, anything like this. But I recognize that if I weren't born, I would have been spared all of the suffering that I have gone through, and I wouldn't be losing out on the pleasures that I've had, because I wouldn't exist to be deprived of those, if you get what I mean. And I think no matter how good my life is, I think it would have been better had I not come into existence, because of that sort of asymmetry. The fact that I'm not being deprived of any of the pleasures because I don't exist for that to be an issue. But given that I have come into existence, I am going to experience the harms. And I think those harms are very serious, and they can be more serious if you have a very bad life. I think my life has been very good in the grand scheme of things, but still I suffer from, is bereavement for when people die generally, or is it when your spouse dies? Yeah.
No, you're right. When
so it's a loss of a loved one.
A loss of emotional response. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I was just having a conversation with another guy, and he asked me, how have I suffered in my life? And I think there are everyday sufferings, or everyday forms of suffering that we all go through. But I think there are also significant periods of suffering in one's life. And I'd say the one that always comes to my mind for me is when my granddad was diagnosed with cancer, and that was a very bad time in my life.
Yeah.
And I think that would have been something that I'd have been spared of, as an example, if I'd have never come into existence.
Or your grandfather never.
Or my exactly, and my grandfather would have been spared of the cancer as well. Right. And I think that's one way to look at how someone can be content with how their life is at the moment, but also recognise that it would have been better not to come into existence.
Right. I hear what you're saying, but I critique this as being a bit like a consumer's attitude to life. It's a product.
Yeah.
You're thinking, shall I get this product?
Yeah.
And you're using the sort of pros and cons approach that you might use for buying a washing machine or a car or something like that. Spend this amount, give me this pleasure, but also give me this grief.
Yeah.
Life is not like that.
Yeah.
It's a given.
Yeah.
As Heidegger says, we are thrown into it. We don't get any choice. We essentially have to make of it as best we can. But it's a given, and funny if I take from your layout of the scenario something completely different, which is that it's equal. If we never existed, we never have the suffering, but we never have the positive things at all. Either nothing. It's a nothing. So to wish that. Let's go back to the other thing. The bereavement. Most of us have had something like that. Both my parents. But it's and it makes my experience is that it brought home to me the fact that life is finite. There is some suffering in it, and that's something that you simply have to accept, if you see what I mean. Now, I'm not okay. Somebody who is really in agony from cancer and all that sort of stuff, I think their decisions might be something different.
Yeah.
But I don't take from that it is somehow better to have not been. And on that, I'd apply a sort of language philosophy.
Yeah.
An analysis approach to that.
Yeah.
When you say it's better, the way the word better works is that it's a condition that is experienced by some agent. It can't just, better doesn't just float in a void. You can't have an empty universe that just has better in it. Therefore it's better to something. Now, if none of us exist, for what or who is it better? And it has to be an agent that can, that is, I use the word intelligent, but it is at least sentient, conscious, up to a level where things can be better. And I suspect that for something like a sea anemone, there's no better or worse. I mean, they move around, they go for the light and that sort of thing. You could say that's better. At our level, there is definitely a better. So if you're using the word better, it must imply that there is some agent somewhere still there for which it is better. Now, if we're all gone, that's God. You're saying for God, it is better that no humans exist. And we know from the scriptures, whatever religion you go to, God brings the world and us into being of his own volition. And, I'm not very religious, but I can see the point of that kind of myth. That gives us grounding for making life worthwhile, because the ultimate creator of everything has seen fit to bring us into it and be offered all these kind of temptations, the sufferings. I mean, in the Bible, you've got Job who goes through the most appalling kind of...
Yeah.
I think that's a bit of a lesson to us, if you see what I mean.
Can I ask you a question about better?
Yeah.
So, do you think the phrase "better off dead" makes sense?
No. I mean, to whom? Well, okay. It's better off to the relatives because they've got the will and they go, ooh. But to the person, it doesn't make any sense at all because you're not there anymore. So how can it be better for you?
I understand. I think, so the way I understand it is that something can be a better state of affairs even if there's no one who actively benefits from that. Because a situation can be so bad that if it were to simply end, that would be a better state of affairs, if you get what I mean. For example, if someone, we used the example before, if someone's has cancer and they're in extreme agony, I think it makes sense to me that it is better for them if that were to end through them dying.
I can agree with that, but unless I've got you totally wrong, I think what you're advocating is for people not to bother to reproduce at all. So that at some point in the future, there simply is no human race.
Yes, no, you've got it right.
And then you say that is a better outcome. I'm not talking about the individual cases because I kind of agree that if you're suffering horribly from something or other and then you decide to end it all, it's that what you'd have to say then is not being is better. You see, the problem is it can't be better for anybody for you if you're not there. However, it's got to the point where continuing is so unbearable, and that's the better way to put it. However, that's a different case to saying the whole of the human species voluntarily decides not to reproduce anymore, so there is, in 100 years there is no human species. For whom is that better? Because there's no humans around to be better for.
I understand. So I think that maybe the term better is elusive, and I'd have to think about it a bit more, but I would say, so when I use the term better, I mean that the situation is better in my judgment. So I understand, but I think a situation can be better even if there's no one who in the better situation is actively benefiting from it. Like when I said,
that's a good one.
like when I said that if someone has cancer, and I would say saying that it would be better if they were dead does make sense, I think.
I think the individual case is confusing what I think is your case. They're two different ways of looking at it, two different cases, aren't they? So let's focus on we want to end the human species
through
voluntarily.
Through non-reproduction.
No way am I
going
around stabbing people.
But
if you're persuasive enough, and you convince enough people, then in 100 years or so there will be no people left at all. So I come back to my point that, well, how can that be better? I mean, what are you left with? Well, it's a world of other species who will ultimately, one or two of them will become our replacements. Maybe 100 million years. They'll evolve into sentient beings. Well, then does the same argument apply?
No, so I think the same argument would apply. So I completely understand that concern. I do think
it is you're against. So,
I do think. Well, the thing that I'm against morally is us as moral agents bringing new sentient beings into existence, whether they're humans or not. And I think the reason I'm against it is because I think it comes with the imposition of suffering and death on someone, or whatever you see as a harm, it will come with harm. You can't gain any form of consent from them. Like you said before, I was sort of treating life as like a consumerist, where you see a washing machine, you look at the pros, you look at the cons. But ultimately, actually, no one can look at the pros and cons in life. And life seems pretty significant. It seems like the sort of thing that you should have to read the terms and conditions and sign on the dotted line if you want to experience it or not. But obviously, none of us get to do that. It's a decision that someone else makes for us. And I think even if someone sees creating someone as an act of good, there are cases that we'd all agree where it's horrible. If you knowingly bring someone into a war zone, or you create someone and they get cancer as a child, something like that. Those are all cases that we see as horrible. And I think even if you see it as a good to create someone, just the risk that they may be one of those people who has those bad lives, given that not creating them isn't harming them because they don't exist, it's better to err on the side of caution, I think.
No.
You don't agree?
I still think this whole way of looking things is I'm not saying it's wrong, it is just somewhat bizarre to me.
I can understand that.
And because the world is simply not like that. That's all I can say. Now, if you are religious...
What do you mean by that?
Well, as I said, the Heidegger quote, we are thrown in. It's not like
we're thrown in by someone else, right? Who made a decision to do that?
Yeah, the whole human species is thrown in. We find ourselves.
Oh, okay.
We find ourselves as Homo sapiens,
Evolution
being Homo
threw us
sapiens.
in. Yeah,
And actually, what's interesting is it's only with late capitalism that I'm putting a feeling. I'm not sure if this is totally correct, but I wonder if you guys are a product of luxury belief, late capitalism.
Interesting you say that.
If you lived in the medieval times,
Yeah.
you're too busy surviving. Practically every other time. I mean, all right, there'd be cults. There are all death cults, that sort of
Or
thing.
I think it would be an anti-death cult, because the only reason there's death is because there's birth.
Yeah, and I think there have been such things in the past. But
Yeah.
the question is, where are they now? And sad to say, I don't think you'll last very long.
No, I understand that.
The obvious reason you're not going to convince everybody.
No, I understand. So there's sort of two things there.
Just get on with enjoying life.
I do think we should enjoy life, but I do think I think we should enjoy life, but I also think all of us, not just antinatalists, also should put significant time aside to improve the lot of others.
That's totally different.
But
I can't disagree with that.
Yeah.
Great, brilliant.
But I think even though so improving the lot of others is part of what I see as like doing good in the world, but I also think like preventing beings from coming into existence, or maybe that's a weird phrasing, preventing, or not creating new beings, is also part of doing good, I think. I think that is a virtuous act. It's a morally good act. But going back to luxury beliefs, interesting. It's this idea, antinatalism. Obviously, the word is very new, but the idea has been around for thousands of years. It was in ancient Greece. There's a famous poet. Do you know Abul Ala al-Mari?
Oh no.
The ancient Syrian poet.
Okay.
He was an antinatalist. In fact, on his grave it was written, "This is the crime done to me by my father, unto who I do to none," because he had no children. And so it's very interesting doing a bit of antinatalist archaeology, as you could call it.
Okay. I thought I was pushing the boat out a bit when I said that, because it occurred to me that throughout history there will always have been, but of course the movements will never last very long. So
yes.
I mean, it's a kind of. It's another reason I'm interested. When you look at the sort of distribution of outlooks on life within a human population, it's never like everybody's the same. You don't get populations like that. There's always variation. That's how it is. So in terms of your commitment to life, on the one end you have, either very devout religious people or maybe humanists as well, but do love the idea of bringing children into the world. I think it's great. It gives them validation and all that sort of thing. And at the other end there's you guys. But it's a distribution. Now, I mean, oddly enough, I think I said this yesterday, I went through the same phase when I was in my late teens.
Oh, really?
I mean, it could have been on your side. And for me, it was just a general state of depression with the state of the world, and this is the height of the Cold War, how crap humanity is, and all those kind of arguments you will have heard. But as one grows older, and I never had children myself, but with nephews. Though. In evolutionary terms, and this fits into your idea of doing as much good as you can for other people. I do have blood relatives in the sense of my nephew and niece and their children. So actually, in Darwinian terms, by helping them, and my sister and her,
helping the family genes continue.
I am actually being part of that sort of survival instinct. And there is a theory in I can't remember who did the maths back in the early 20th century, and genetically it's when they put it, says it's worth risking your life for 2 siblings, 4 cousins, 8. In other words, they share genes with you. Your sister and brothers share genes with you, and their children share genes with you. So in fact, there are cases where it does actually make sense to curtail your desire to have your own children. So say you're in an environment which cycles rapidly say it cycles between good years and bad years, or drought and famine and plenty and that sort of thing. So the uncle who is around to help sister's children is actually a benefit if he's got his own children. I mean, this is a genuine argument in evolution. So in other words, and I think this is probably one of the drivers in I mean, if there is such a thing as a gay gene, I know it's very controversial, but I mean, the question: if there is such a gay gene, how on earth would it ever survive? And that would be the driver.
I've heard this.
There is value. There is survival value in not being interested in reproducing with your own.
Do you think?
Sorry, it's pollen from the tree.
No, it's all good. I'm not saying that you are saying this. I'm just trying to understand. Do you think that sort of a pursuit of our evolutionary sort of instincts or the purpose we can serve evolutionarily, do you think that's a moral justification?
Yes and no. Again, I mean, depending on what language you use, if you're a materialist, then and a lot of materialists, you can find them around here, or reductionists, they will try and ground morals in an evolutionary account. They'll say, well, for those sort of reasons, then we should behave well to each other. I don't think that really works, because there's other facets about evolution that you could argue make us really selfish and so on. So, like I said before, although I wasn't brought up heavily religious, I now see the reason why it's a good thing. So, to give that grounding in why some things are right and some things are wrong, you do need to have something like Christianity or Islam or whatever, one of those religions that give you a transcendent view of the universe, where there's something in it that determines what is good. And if you have that, or at least an appreciation of its significance, then I don't think you could come up with ideas like this. Because there is. I mean, I could put it in reductionist terms, if you like, or I mean, there is a whole way of looking at this to say the universe is God, back to Spinoza, in that sense, there's still something sacred, which is the universe. You could phrase that to say, well, the whole world is our parent in a sense, and we have an obligation, we view our parents as being all important. Think about it. They're gods when we're really tiny. They are provide us with everything. So that's to me, that's our relation to the universe. It brings us into being. So we have a sort of obligation to it to continue being. So I'm trying to place my opposition to your viewpoints within the context of our various religious traditions, and also the ones that are not particularly religious, but they still see a transcendent viewpoint.
Do you think that, because when I listen to that, I think it's interesting to talk about the sort of nature of reality and maybe the obligations we have to the universe and stuff. But when it comes to justifying something as significant as procreation, I think we need to have really concrete reasons for taking that act, if you get what I mean. Because I think if it's a sunny afternoon, you're sitting down and having a conversation about something like that, it's all good. But if something as serious as imposing life, which contains a significant amount of suffering on someone, if that's what hangs in the balance with that conversation, I think we probably need more stable ground than a general sense that we have an obligation to the universe, if you get what I mean.
It's interesting. Again, I just realised that there's something here about the importance of language and the terms you use. Because I balk when you say you are imposing something on your offspring. I could equally come back and say, no, I'm gifting something on my offspring.
It's interesting.
Why is one a better... I mean, it reflects your emotional commitment to a position. So it's a sort of circular thing. Where does that position come from?
I understand.
And you're using the language to kind of, as soon as you start saying imposing, a lot of people say, oh, maybe he has a point. But because it speaks to what I was saying earlier, that I like to strip away these things and find So it's this thing which I think I was covering a bit in the last segment, which is that there are predispositions to either be fecund or not fecund. And if you want to take an evolutionary point of view, there is a justification. Even with a religious view, you could say, well, everybody has a value. Uncles and aunts, they have values and so on. And you've already agreed that being good to other people is a virtue. So you're on board with that. So in that sense, I just hope your message doesn't reach
people who want to do good.
Many more people under 5 years.
Well, hopefully it'll reach you someday. Daniel will have to wear you down. I wanted to, if you have any more time.
Oh yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah. I wanted to quickly touch on the idea of life being a gift.
Okay, yeah.
Because I intentionally don't use that wording of life being a gift, because I think a gift, as we all understand it, is something that I think if I were to give you a gift that wasn't returnable, which if you were to try and give it back, as it were, which in the context of life would be suicide essentially, it's very serious. It comes with deep commitment in terms of we must nourish our body, we must do exercise, we must, build community, have friendships and all this sort of stuff. Which I'm not saying we can find pleasure in that, but it's a commitment that you have to make to be able to maintain your health, right?
Yeah.
I think those are all things that disqualify life as a gift. Because if I were to, for example, at Christmas, get you a gift where the only way you were able to get shift of it were to kill yourself, and to maintain the gift were to put in serious effort, and it was not something that you previously had any interest in receiving, I think that would disqualify it as being described as a gift.
Well, I'm taking all the good things that somebody can get from life, and the amount of effort your parents put into enabling that for you. That's the gift bit. I get your point.
Yeah.
None of these things are necessarily transferable. I absolutely get the point that there's a difference between a Christmas present and life.
Yes. Yeah.
Some of the reasons you've said.
Yeah.
But it captures something of the transaction that has happened. Is it because I was reacting to your imposition? I think you said imposition.
Yeah. I said imposition.
And I just want to say, well, actually, another way of looking at it is a gift. Now, neither imposing nor gift, or they don't describe everything about it.
Yeah, they don't capture everything.
I mean, an imposition, you might say, is what would an imposition be? You've got to stay lockdown, for example. You can't leave your house. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's an imposition.
Yeah.
That's bad.
Do you not think suffering is an imposition like that, though?
Well, Paul, if somebody else is suffering, making you suffer, a torturer, for example, most definitely it falls into that somebody imposing something on you.
And you don't think parents do that? Because ultimately the only reason any of us suffer is because someone created us.
There's a bit more to it than that. I mean, it's not a direct causal link. Although you could, I see where you're coming from. Because
ultimately,
if we weren't here, we wouldn't suffer. Okay.
Exactly.
I suppose at the end of the day, I'm simply saying, in most cases, for most people, it should be the case that the value that they get from life exceeds the suffering.
Yeah.
But there's no guarantee.
Exactly.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I'd say this is another critique. You're coming at it from the consumer point of view. So what's the guarantee? Go on. I want to see the paperwork.
Yeah. What's the warranty on this?
Nobody asked me if I want.
Yeah.
Therefore, where's the paperwork? Where's the specification? Now, again, I just say, well, life isn't like that. What more can I say? It just isn't. I'd say drop the sort of general antinatalism and stress the building a better society through whatever is your belief system. Whether it's humanism, Christianity, whatever. Whatever.
I agree with a lot of that once we're here, and I can just give this rounding off bit about society. So, I think, like you said, focus on making the world a better place in however you see fit to do that. I agree with that. I think there will be more people that come into existence. Society will continue, despite the best efforts of us five here. Society will continue, and so we should try to make it a better place, right, whilst it exists. But I think bringing new people into it is simply creating the opportunity for the issues that we are trying to rectify. For example, it's better that we have modern medicine so that we can alleviate the illnesses and pains that we have since we exist. But to create someone so that they can benefit from modern medicine, to me, doesn't make sense. And so I think we should try to better society, but as part of that, reduce the amount of beings coming into it, ultimately so that no one comes into existence. But I agree, once we're here, do an exercise, learn a language if you can, although I'm a hypocrite on that point, 'cause I'm shit at languages. But
Yeah.
get outside. All those things you say. Once you're here, I think that's a massive benefit.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately all those do is try to alleviate issues that are caused by us coming into existence in the first place, which I get is depressing as fuck to consider. But I think creating someone is a very significant thing. We have to consider all these things when we're doing it.
Yeah. And if you want to round up, then my final rounding up
Cool, go on.
is just to say, it's a sort of thank you to you guys.
Yeah.
And it's something I love about Speaker's Corner that we don't see enough of. People with views that they've thought about and can argue for, that are run contradictory to, if you like, the mainstream.
Yeah.
So in our conversation, 20-25 minutes, I've had to do things, defend things, if you like, that I wouldn't normally have to go. I just take for granted.
Yeah.
Now, again, this is a sort of mental exercise that adds to our, benefits of, country, but the point is that it helps you clarify, it helps you see, I wasn't very strong on that point, maybe I should go away and think about it, and hopefully you as well. Thank you again.